Today, I'm going to dive into the world of brunettes and browns with you. So I hope you guys are excited. I have a lot of tips and tricks to tell you about formulating browns. So when your client comes in and she's a level 2 and she wants to say, let's be a warm level 6, I would suggest only lifting her to a level 6 or 7. You want to keep the warm in those underlying pigments. You don't want to lighten them so that they're out. You want to keep that to control the warmth of your brown. Now, let's say your client wants something more like an ash brown, a mushroom brown they call it, or I like it to call it a taupe brown. It sounds a little bit prettier to me. You want to lift your client about 1 or 2 levels lighter. Let's say she's starting from a level 2, because you want to be able to show those ash tones. If you only lifted her to a 6-7 and she wants that cool direction, that cool is only going to cancel out these warm and it's going to neutralize it. So you want to lift it about 1 or 2 levels high. In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 examples and 3 formulations of different browns that I like to do. So one with more of a warm direction and one with more of a cool direction. And then one where we have clients that come in and their hair is super light and it's like really transparent. You guys get those clients in your chair and they want to go brown. So I'll show you some tips of how I like to formulate going from light to dark onto this strand here. In today's video, I will be toning with IGORA VIBRANCE just because I feel like this is something similar we use in a salon in an everyday situation. Now, let's say your client doesn't want the fade out and she wants something more permanent, then definitely go ahead and grab that permanent line. But I feel like in most cases, our clients these days, they don't know what they want. So we often like to tone with a demi in the salon. Now, the difference between a permanent and a demi is that your demi is going to be like your sheer lipstick or your sheer lip gloss, and your permanent is more like a matte, so something that's more staining on the hair. Super important because you want to write down the amount of color you're using in each bottle. That way if you run out, you know what you're mixing. And it's also good to have it on hand because let's say another client comes in, you kind of have that written down for reference in the future. All right, so for her, we are going to start with a level 6-6. Now the number behind the dash in Schwarzkopf means the tone direction. So we're gonna go level 6-chocolate brown. I am doing 6-6 as my main color, is again because remember what level we're starting off with. It's an 8 level 9 and it's pretty porous, so I already know it's gonna soak up a lot of that pigment. It's thirsty, so I wanna make sure I'm adding a lot of warmth to my formula. So just for this little strand, let's say we do 10 grams. It's also important when you're using a scale because of the ratio. You want to know exactly how much of each formula you're using. So the next one is 0-77. It is a booster. It has no level and it is a copper. So the reason why I'm doing a copper is again because I want to fill it a little bit. When I put the brown in, I don't want it to go too muddy. So we're going to use this as cushion to give us an extra warm glow. Because I did 10 grams of level 6-chocolate, I am only gonna add about 3 grams of 0-77, no level -copper, because again, I just wanna add some warmth and I don't want my brown to go too muddy. My ratio is going to be 1-to-1, so I'm just going to add 13 grams of my IGORA VIBRANCE, 1.9% gel lotion. It's important to use a whisk when you're mixing. That way you're getting the formulation broken up really nicely and it's evenly mixed. Sometimes I feel like when we're in a rush and we're using a brush, you kind of get clumps of like say, 6-6 in one corner and then in the other corner is like 7-00. So it's not evenly mixed. So that's why I like to use a whisk. We're gonna start applying this onto our darker blonde strand, our level 8, 9, more so an 8. This is a client who comes back for service who had previous lightened hair and she wants to go a little bit darker for the fall. So we're gonna just fully saturate this from root to ends. And for best results, I like to leave on the full 20 minutes. But I do check on it at 15 minutes to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do. And of course, in the salon, always use your brush, or sorry, use a comb to make sure. You want to use a comb to make sure that you are fully saturating it and making sure that the color is going on both sides. Okay, so now that we've finished applying, we're going to let this swatch sit for about 15 minutes before we rinse, and I'm gonna move on to the next swatch. All right, now moving on to my favorite. I love formulating cool ash browns, known as like mushroom brown, but I'm gonna use a prettier word today and we're gonna call it a taupe brown. So this is kind of like a neutral, cool tone direction. It's gonna be the complete opposite of the warm brown, and to get this to nail it, you really do have to lift it about 1 to 2 levels higher if you're lightening the hair, or if she's coming back, make sure she's like a level 9 before you apply this formulation on. To make sure is look at your client's inspo picture. If they want a lighter ash brown, it's kind of more like a blonde, then you wouldn't be using a level 6, 7. You'd take it a little bit higher. You can use something like a level 8 or 9, or have like 5 grams of a level 6 just to give you some depth. But in our case today, I like my taupe browns to sit at a level 7, 8. So I'll be using a level 8-11 and 6-46. So the dash behind, the number behind the dash is going to be a beige chocolate and also a double cendre. So it's a blue violet cool direction tone with a little bit of my beige chocolate in there. This is going to be my starting level here. As you can tell, it's a little bit lighter than the last swatch that we just had. This is sitting more at a true level 9, but because it's porous and dry like some of our clients, I'm gonna say it's gonna be like a level 10, 9. This is a perfect level to work with if you want to deposit those ash browns. Okay, so I am going to be doing, my ratio is going to be 2 to 1. So I will be doing, let's say 20 grams of my level 6-46, which is my level 6-beige chocolate, and then 10 grams of a level 8-cendre, which is going to be my cool purple blue tone direction. We will be doing 10 grams of my level 8-cendre, which is more of a violet blue tone direction. So definitely more cool. Okay. So equal parts of this gives us 30 grams. Easy math. Come on here, dressers. Mixing with the whisk because it's gonna give us nice consistency and get those colors to beautifully blend and harmonize together. Your toner, because you really want to make sure you are saturating both ends of the hair, both ends. Okay, so again, we're gonna set a timer for this, pull it off to the side, and we're gonna check on this swatch in about 15 minutes. And let's go check on the other swatch actually while we're at it. Okay, so this is the first swatch that we were working on. And as you can see, it's starting to develop really nice. And I just like to run my finger through it to make sure that I can see what it's turning into. Look how pretty that is. It's turning into a nice warm brown. For the last swatch, I think it would be a good idea to show you guys a strand that maybe is your client who is really light. Let's say now she's like a level 10, 11, and she comes in, it's again the fall, and she wants something a little bit darker, maybe something more on the blonde side with a little bit of warmth. I feel like a lot of stylists struggle with putting warm into their formulations, so I think this would be a good video to show. How I would formulate this is definitely look at your client's inspo picture. You want to determine if it's more on the warm side or more on the neutral side. Now you got to remember, neutral and warm are two different things. Even though neutral is neutral, it's still going to have a little bit of that cool tone direction, whereas warm, it's definitely warm, like it's yellow, like you can see the gold. So one, you want to make sure you talk to your clients about that, because I feel like clients have a different eye than us and everybody perceives color differently. So you want to make sure if they're seeing more of a neutral gold or if they're seeing more of that gold pigment. Okay. So for this, one of my favorite formulations that Schwarzkopf has come out with, it's in the Muted Desert line, is 7-42. It is so beautiful. It's a level -7 muted beige with a blue tone direction. So it's super beautiful. But what I like to do with it is add my level 9, because we want to keep it on the light, you know, a little bit of the lighter side, but we're going to be adding gold copper to it to give us that bronze look. Because she is a level 9, 10, mostly definitely a 10. You can see there's even some of that cool tone direction in there. And this is a client that comes in and she, let's say, wants something a little bit more natural, something on the bronze side. Make sure you ask her, do you see more cool tones or do you see more gold tones? Because your client sees different colors than us, so we want to make sure that we are on the same page. So I'm going to start with mixing 20 grams of level 9- gold copper. I think that the gold in Schwarzkopf is such a beautiful line. It is like a true gold. It's like that yolk in an egg. Like, it's a beautiful gold. And then I'm going to do 10 grams of 7-0. So the color, the end result should live somewhere in the level 8 world. Because I want more coverage, I'm going to be using the IGORA VIBRANCE 1.9% lotion activator. Really, you know, dive deep into that cuticle. And the ratio for this is 1:1, so that's going to be 30 grams. Okay, and use our whisk. You can see that beautiful gold popping through. And we're going to apply it. Oh, forgot my gloves. Okay. All right, now we're going to apply it root to end, just like you would on a client. Make sure you get both sides. Now, let's say your client wasn't a level 10 and she came in and she was more of a level 6. How do you achieve a level 6 bronze? Well, you would ask the client how much gold they would want to show or how much ash they want to show. And then from there, you take your starting level, which let's say is level 7, level 6. It's on the warmer tone. It's your client who comes back, you know, 4 months later and her bleach is washed out and it's that really orangey yellow pigment. And let's say she wanted to be more of a cool bronze. Well, then you would need to add more cool into your formulation. So instead of you know using something with a warm tone direction, I would do something with more of an ash direction as my main dominant ratio. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right, so let's check up on our first swatch here. And it looks like it is ready to rinse, so I'm gonna do that. And we're gonna let this one sit for 20 minutes, or sorry, 15, and then we'll kind of take a look after. So our first 2 swatches are ready to rinse, so I will do that now, and then I'll show you guys what everything looks like after. Okay, so we are finished and here is the final results for formulating for brunettes. As you can see, this strand is definitely more cool and on the cooler side than this one here on my right, which is a warmer brown. And then of course we got our middle one here, which is super pretty. It's kind of like a blonde sitting in a level 8 world, but definitely more a warm tone direction there. So I'm just gonna quickly show you guys the before so that we can kind of get a reference and remember what our starting point was to how we got to our finished result. What we formulated to was our swatch here that was sitting at a level 8-9. And this is definitely, could be a client who comes back for their regular toner a couple months or weeks later, and you can really see how much it's faded, and she wants to go more brunette, something more natural for the fall. And remember in our formulation, we added 3 grams of 0-55 to bring back those warm pigments that we stripped out in her hair months prior, let's just say. Or let's say she is a client who has level 2 natural hair. You have to pre-lighten her to about a level 6 or 7, I would say, before you deposit this formula on if you want it to be a level 6, like a really rich level warm 6. This is a great toning reference to use when you have a client who sometimes you struggle with formulating browns on, where it becomes too hollow, too muddy. A key takeaway I can tell you from this formulation is to definitely do not be scared to formulate with only warm tones to give you that nice rich brown. Okay. For our next swatch here, we have our swatch that was sitting at a level 8, or sorry. For the next swatch here, we have our swatch that was living in the level 9-10 world. This is a client with, you know, like maybe overly porous hair, whose hair, no, I don't want to talk about that. For our next swatch, we were formulating for more of a taupe brown. So something that lives more in the cool ash tone direction. As you can see here, it does look a little bit more, I don't want to say dull, but not as vibrant and rich as our last strand that we just did. It just lives more on the ashier side. So for this formulation, we added 10 grams, remember, the level 8-11, the Cendre, the blue violet tone direction. And as you can see here, it gives us that nice taupe cool brown that you see. Now, let's say your client does want something like this and she has level 2 hair. You definitely are going to need to pre-line her to, I would say, a level 8, definitely a level 8-9 before you deposit something with cool in it, because remember, cool tones have a little bit more depth because ash tones absorb, whereas warm tones reflect. So your warm tones will always look brighter than your cool tones, which is why you need to lift at least 1 or 2 level lighters than your desired target level. All right, next up, we have our clients who have level 10, super ashy, maybe super overly porous, maybe even has still a little bit of purple shampoo in their hair, and they want to be a little bit more warmer. I feel like as hairstylists, this is something we struggle with behind the chair, as definitely with adding warm tones in. So for her, we did a level 7 neutral, and then we added a level 9-57, which was our main formulating dominant tone there. And then we added only 10 grams of 7-0 because we wanted to live in a level 8 world. And you can see it's definitely is a beautiful blonde. That warm pigment is back in there. It's not muddy, it's not hollow, and I think it just looks beautiful. Thank you guys for following along on my mini series on how to formulate for brunettes. I hope you guys are able to apply some of these tips and tricks behind the chair on real clients, and it'll ease your mind when it comes to formulating.